So in this video, I'm discussing the word repeal. What does it mean? What is the effect of repeal of a law? What is the effect on pending cases in court? Does it automatically exonerate an accused person? Does it automatically nullify existing charges in courts of law across the country once a law is repealed by parliament? Now, I have a caveat here. This lecture is for general knowledge and not in relation to any matter that is currently pending in court in any part of Nigeria or outside Nigeria. I have had several emails and private chats from people asking me to shed light on what it means to repeal a law, the legal consequences of repealing a law. So this is purely for legal knowledge, general legal knowledge, and like I said, not in relation to any case that is pending in any court of law. So please just have an open mind and follow the lecture that I'm making on repeal, the legal consequences of repealing any law by parliament, right? Now, some laws become obsolete over time. They are no more in tune with modern reality. So much has changed. And because of that, those laws require to either be amended or repealed. Now, imagine a law that was made in the days of Olympian typewriter. Remember Olympian typewriter? I attended secondary school at a time that there were no computers. What we had Olympian typewriter, so we had a typing pool. I attended a school that had the sponsorship of foreign donors. And so in the typing pool, we had hundreds of typewriters, Olympian typewriters. Imagine if a law was made during that time regulating the use of Olympian typewriters in offices. Today, the computer has taken over completely. More than 98 or 99% of offices in the country today, they now use computers. They no more use Olympian typewriters. Now, in such a situation, the law that was made then to regulate the use of Olympian typewriters, will necessarily be repealed by parliament to give way for the modern law providing for the use of computers. That same situation applies to other subjects like crime, and also applies to contracts and other subjects generally. So a law becomes obsolete and becomes necessary to repeal. And parliament has the power to repeal any such law that they consider to be repealed. Now, to repeal means to officially cancel. Officially cancel. It means to revoke. It means to abolish a law. It means to annul or invalidate a law. You abolish, you annul, you invalidate the law. So the entire legislation is hereby repealed. That means the law is officially cancelled, the law is officially revoked, and the law is officially abolished. Now, this is different from what is usually called amendment. Parliament would always amend laws from time to time. The Constitution of Nigeria has been amended over time. Other pieces of legislation, especially the Electoral Act, has been amended over time by parliament. Repeal is different from amendment. Amendment is for you to cancel or add or subtract some sections of the legislation while the legislation is still there. You don't cancel the legislation. It's still there. You just remove some sections, add others. That is amendment. Amendment is different from repeal. While amendment still keeps the law, repeal cancels the law or revokes it completely. Right? I hope you are getting the differences between amendment and repeal of a law. But here is it. Every repealed law usually gets instant replacement. Every repealed law usually gets instant replacement. The 1979 Constitution was repealed, but quickly replaced with the 1999 Constitution. Note, every repealed law usually gets instant replacement. Every law addresses a societal issue, and it is most unlikely to repeal a law. Let's say a law against kidnapping. It's most unlikely to repeal that law and not have an instant replacement to still address the issue of kidnapping. But this time around, the new law would always give more provisions and would always be made to align with modern reality and expectations of society. Okay? So that is why I said every repealed law would always, in most cases, have instant replacement. Now, every repealed law would also normally have what is called saving clause. Saving clause. I will explain this. Okay? A saving clause is a provision in a law that exempts pending actions. Notes. Pending actions. Exempts consequences. Exempts liabilities from the effect of the repeal. So, a saving clause in a legislation would always preserve what was in existence, the actions that were taken before the repeal of the legislation. If it relates to contract, a saving clause will preserve all such contracts that had already been entered into before the repeal. So the law would not expect that, oh, contracts that were entered before the repeal are hereby nullified. People had spent money. People had invested, a lot in the contract. And the repeal law now does as if the contract was not in there. In the same vein, if it relates to crime, right? A saving clause will preserve the cases that are already pending in courts before the repeal. That means a repeal does not always invalidate existing trials. I hope you are following. A repeal does not always invalidate existing trials. Why? Because of what is called in law a saving clause, which is always there when legislations are repealed. We'll continue. Now, let's look at the Terrorism Act, for instance. Terrorism Act was passed by the National Assembly of Nigeria during Jonathan's administration. I think it followed the bombing, the Christian bombing of the Madala Church or something. And the Anti-Terrorism Act was passed by the National Assembly. It was first passed in 2011. Okay? After that, there was another one amended in 2013. Okay? Now, the 2013 version was repealed by Parliament. What we now have in existence in Nigeria relating to this subject is the 2022 version of the Anti-Terrorism Act. They said 2022 version of the Act has a saving clause which preserves all charges, all prosecutions that were already pending in courts before the repeal. I hope you are following. Now, let's look at the section together. That section that talks about saving clause in the 2022 Anti-Terrorism Act. Let's look at it together. Please be patient. Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022. It has a saving clause. This clause at section 97, it calls it savings and transitional provision. This is the saving clause. What does it say? Any regulation, order, requirement, certificate, notice, direction, decision, authorization, consent, application, note, ongoing cases in the courts, requests or things made, issued, given, or done under the repealed acts or amended sections of the repealed act, okay, shall if in force at the commencement of this act, continue to be in force and have effect as if made, issued, given, or done under the corresponding provisions of this act. I'm sure you understand this very well. This is section 97 of the current Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022. That is the extant law now. This law has section 97. This section preserves, because it has savings and transitional provision. So this section preserves everything that was done, that was ongoing before the repeal. Every litigation that was in courts, which made reference to that law that has been repealed, this section preserves every such litigation in courts. This section preserves any such punishment that was meted to anybody pursuant to the repealed law. This section preserves every such sanction, every such decision, direction, notice, everything in its entirety that was in existence before the repeal of that law. Okay? Note, we are referring to section 97 of the current law, the 2022 law. That law has this section which preserves what had happened before this law, which preserves everything that was done using the 2013 Act. I know you are following me very well. So we continue. That same law, the 2022 Anti-Terrorism Act, it has section 98, which specifically provides for repeal. This is the title of that section. That's the side note to that section. It calls it repeal. Let me read. 1. The Terrorism Prevention Act number 10, 2011 is hereby repealed. 2. Any regulation, order, requirement, certificate, notice, decision, direction, authorization, consent, application, ongoing cases in the courts. I'm sure you've noted that. Ongoing cases in the courts, request or thing made, issued, given, or done under the repealed acts. The repealed acts. Okay? That is 2011 and 2013 repealed acts. That's the language of the legislation. If in force at the commencement of this act, shall continue to be in force and have effect as if made, issued, given, or done under the corresponding sections or provisions of these very acts, 2022 Act. I hope you are following. Now, this section shows you that, yes, it recognizes the fact that the other law was repealed, but this section preserves what had been done before the repeal of that law. So we continue. Sub 3 says, any proceeding, prosecution, sentence, judgment, charge, or course of action pending or existing immediately before the commencement of this act under any of the repealed acts in respect of any right, interest, obligation, or liability may be continued or commenced, continued, notes, or commenced, as the case may be, and any determination of a court of law, tribunal, or other authority or person may be enforced by the same extent, to the same extent that such proceeding, prosecution, sentence, judgment, charge, course of action, or determination might have been continued, commenced, or enforced as if this new act had not been made. So you can see from these provisions of the law that the law itself, the current 2022 Terrorism Act of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has preserved in the same law the things that had happened before the repeal of the 2011 and 2013 Terrorism Act. Now, this is about the law. There is another legislation in Nigeria known as the Interpretation Act. Interpretation Act. Now, let me explain what Interpretation Act means. Interpretation Act is like the manual. When you buy a vehicle, you have the manual, and the manual gives you how to navigate the vehicle, what this button represents, how to go through, how to make use of the vehicle. Interpretation Act is like a manual. It makes provision on how to interpret laws that have been made by Parliament. So it talks about what will happen when it relates to counting of the number of days for the doing of a thing. It talks about when time will begin to count for the purpose of doing a lawful action, a legal act. It talks about the implication of the repeal of a legislation and many other things. What concerns us in this video is what does the Interpretation Act 2004, what does it say about the effect or the consequence of repealing an act of Parliament? So let's go there. We go to section 6 sub 1 of that act, Interpretation Act. It says, the repeal of an enactment shall not, note, 1, revive anything not in force or existence at the time when the repeal takes effect. 2, affect the previous operation of the enactment or anything done, duly done, or suffered under the enactment. Note, affect the previous operation of that law that has been repealed. 3, affect any right, privilege, obligation, liability accrued or incurred during the enactment. 4, now we get to 5, affect any investigation, affect any legal proceeding or remedy in respect of any such rights, privileges, obligations, liability, penalty, forfeiture, or punishments, and affect any such investigation, legal proceeding, or remedy which may be instituted, continued, or enforced, and any such penalty, forfeiture, or punishment may be imposed, follow me, as if the enactment that was repealed had never been repealed. This is the Interpretation Act. So what does this one mean? This one also preserves everything that had been done in a court of law before the repeal of an act of Parliament. Honestly, this is not my word, this is not my statement. I am lifting directly from the legislation. So if you Google online, you check Interpretation Act section 6 sub 1, you confirm what I'm telling you. It is exactly the same as what I am telling you now, that this section preserves everything that had been in place prior to the repeal of an act of Parliament. So what this means is that if you have a case in court, and while the case is yet to be determined, the law upon which you were charged is repealed, it might be dangerous for you to insist that there is no charge against you. Why? Because of the laws I have cited, the laws that you can also Google online and see for yourself. What I have done is to make reference to those laws. I refer you to the sections of those laws. So you can also Google them online and then see exactly what I'm telling you. The reason is that the laws I have just cited do not support the position that there is no charge and no law against someone that is standing trial, whose trial was commenced during the pendency of a law that has been repealed. Why? Because there is always a saving clause which saves those cases that were pending in court. If it has to do with contract, there is always a saving clause which saves all those contracts that were entered into between a contractor and the federal government of Nigeria, between a contractor and a state government, between individuals per se, what had been done, what was ongoing at the time and had been done, also concluded by them, there were liabilities and obligations and all of that, will not be invalidated because there is a repeal. Why? Because the law will always have saving clauses to support any piece of legislation. I do hope you have learned one or two about what it means to repeal a law and about the legal consequences of repealing a law, especially as it relates to ongoing trials in courts of law across the Federation of Nigeria. I've also made cross-references in other jurisdictions outside Nigeria. So far, what I have seen in several countries is the same thing. And know that the Nigerian legal system is borrowed largely from the common law legal system. So what is applicable here regarding the preservation of actions following an appeal, a repeal, is also applicable in most other countries outside Nigeria. And the internet affords us the opportunity to also look at those instances in those countries, which you can also do. I thank you so much for watching. Thank you for accompanying me. Do remember to subscribe to this channel. Click the subscription button so that we can have a bigger community of people sitting down together to learn and understand law outside the classroom. You know, I feel that law should also be understood informally. Everybody must not go to the school of law, sit down as law students wearing black and white to understand the law. And that's the sense of this channel. What I intend to achieve is to enlighten as many people as I can so that all of us can have an idea of what the law says and be able to follow conversations about what's going on in our country, law in the breaking news. Many thanks, always.